East Ramapo getting a monitor for its troubled school district. We're going to tell you who the state appointed. We're also going to talk to a state senator who represents that district and has been pushing for this. Then Rand Paul dumping on Trump and digging up dirt on the Donald, and what he's found could have actually put a dent in the guy that keeps defying expectations. Also, Hillary Clinton is trying to play down the email controversy, and she's telling her supporters to calm down. But will this thing rise up to becoming more of a serious problem than she'd like to admit? Good evening, everybody, and welcome to RFL. I'm Richard French. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. And we're going to begin this evening with a story we've been following very closely here on RFL. The East Ramapo School District, it is getting a state monitor. Actually, it's getting 3 of them. Dennis Walcott, who many of you may remember as the former chancellor of the New York City school districts, he will begin working in the district immediately along with 2 other professionals who all have experience in turning around failing schools. Now here's what Walcott had to say to us a few hours ago.
We know when something's not right. We know when something stinks and somebody's trying to hand us a bill of goods. We know when an educational plan is not up to muster. We know when a facility should be improved and what type of resources need to be put in that particular facility.
Now, the school board president, Yehuda Westmandel, said that he's looking forward to working with Walcott.
It's absolutely needed to have. If you've been by our board meetings lately, people are upset, people are frustrated. We don't have the resources we need, and I think this is a good day.
All right, many parents, they've been calling for a monitor for months now, if not longer. A state report that was highly critical of the district had in fact recommended one. The school board, as many of you know, dominated by Orthodox Jews who send their children to private schools, and in recent years it's funneled more and more monies out of the public school and into those yeshivas, particularly to pay for transportation and special education. Now, the monitor announced today, well, that monitor won't have the veto power that had originally been called for over the school board. I want to bring in our panel right now to get into this. Richard Brodsky is a former Democratic New York State Assemblyman, now a senior fellow at Demos, professor at NYU, and a full-fledged member of the media. Dominic Carter, political journalist and author. Republican strategist Bill O'Reilly, as we say, the good one. And we are joined here by Democratic State Senator David Carlucci. He's a sponsor of the bill to put in a monitor, and this is a district you call home. Okay, I know what you pushed for isn't exactly what you got, and I heard all the words that this is a good day and a step forward. But specifically, the findings that came out, when Mr. Greenberg came back, he said, you need a fiscal monitor with veto power. This doesn't go as far. Why should the people of East Ramapo think that we just didn't rearrange the deck chairs today?
Well, I think this is a step in the right direction. I was so excited to see our new Commissioner of Education to come down to the district, spend the time, went through a dozen questions from the audience, and to have such a pick like Dennis Walcott, the history that he has, the experience he has, it's extremely exciting. And what I'm lifted about this issue right now is that we have a monitor that's going to be in real time working with the district. So when hot issues arise, they're going to be able to work together to say this is the right path forward. You have the former chancellor of New York City, used to dealing with complex issues. East Ramapo is completely unique. Out of the 719 districts in the state of New York, there is no district like East Ramapo. And so, of course, I would rather the bill that I sponsored be passed into law where the monitor would have veto power. Unfortunately, we weren't able to pass that. So we have to take this the first step forward.
But let me play cynic, if I could, Senator, and say there's been front page stories, editorial pages in the New York Times have gone at this for years. And if you take the position that what's happening to the kids in the district, as you and others have, is wrong and there's not equity going on, embarrassment hasn't done the trick. So because new folks are in, why should we be confident that, yes, they'll point out the inequities, they'll point out where the flaws are, but why would it change a school board that the community could argue, that the Orthodox community could argue, these are duly elected folks, and they're representing what we believe is right? If it hasn't changed to this point, why should today make the public feel that it's going to be any different tomorrow?
Well, I would say, look, we can't guarantee success. But what I can guarantee is that if we don't move forward, if we don't change what's happening on the ground today, we can guarantee failure, because the status quo is failure in East Ramapo. The district is continually changing, and it's a simple equation of where education policy in New York State hasn't kept up with the 21st century. And by having real educational professionals on the ground, keep in mind, Hank Greenberg was not an educational professional, a very smart and talented individual that was down on the ground, had a short period of time, met with a limited amount of individuals, and now we're going to have someone on the ground. And what Mr. Walcott said is that he is going to be down at the barbershops, in the nail salons, walking the streets, and getting the real depth and breadth of the community.
Let me get your perspective, Dominic, because this isn't just a topic, this is home for you. And you've talked about some of the simmering tensions that have been building up here for a while. Does today's announcement, and Walcott, who brings a good resume to the table, it doesn't go?
No, it's almost a waste of time. I respect what the senator pushed for, and I'm speaking now as a constituent in the district who actually sent his kids to that school district, and my son graduated from there. The senator couldn't get what he wanted fully, and many of us respect what he was trying to do. But, and I've known Dennis for a very long time, but what is he going to do? If he has no real power, and the board has already shown you can embarrass us, you can do whatever you want, we're still going forward with our agenda. So what's the point? You're just adding to the bureaucracy. What is he going to do?
Well, I would say, what's the alternative, right? What do? Just sit on our hands and do nothing?
Well, why didn't your bill get passed? I got to tell you, I read your bill. Don't read a lot of them, but I read yours. Made sense to me. I'm not saying this because you're sitting here. I said it the day that you put it through. Why wasn't there a will in Albany when a lot of legislators were willing to take on a community they were ducking before? If you guys were doing the heavy lifting and you have to go back to this place, why couldn't the guys north and south of you do it as well?
Well, I'm sure.
Looking backwards, you're looking forwards. You're better. So let's ignore the question.
From the guy with the Trump button on his shirt here.
Well, I would say, and Richard could speak to it, in knowing, unfortunately, how the sausage is made in Albany, that you've got to reach for the stars, have that vision, what you want, but knowing that sometimes you've got to have that compromise and come to common ground and where you can pass legislation.
Before you answer, defender of Albany,
I'm not defending
where
it.
is the political courage in this? The
You're
kids got
looking-
screwed at the end.
You're looking backwards. Today's the day to look forward. The question about Dennis Walcott and his being a monitor is, first of all, a question of vocabulary. What does it mean to be a monitor? It means to look. It doesn't mean to have power. So,
Well, a fiscal monitor would have had veto power.
well, it depends. Look, I'm making a point here, and I'm not apparently doing it very well. Maybe the audience understands, but I'm
Go slow.
Okay.
Yeah.
This is not a problem to be solved who has the biggest stick and gun. This is a social problem between communities of human beings who are in conflict. The skill involved that needs to be applied here is a mediation skill. That has never been tried. Try it. Maybe it'll work, maybe it won't. But there's nothing wrong with starting off with someone says, I'm going to meet everybody.
But you didn't answer my question, and it's not rhetorical. I believed, as an outsider, that the legislators who have to go back and run for re-election, like the guy to my right, if they stuck their neck out to try and do the full Monty on this thing, why couldn't the other legislators, Republican and Democrat alike, be willing to go along?
Among the legislators. Some members of the delegation of the Assembly
Fear of precedent?
were
The
willing to take an amended version of the Carlucci bill. Others were not. There was a concern about when the state steps in elsewhere. You know, you still do it. It's your show. I'll give you that. But
This is the first time he's remembered, but yeah, go ahead.
what was your name?
Yeah,
again?
exactly.
The point being, let's see if we can provide some sort of intelligent support and constructive context for what Walcott's going to try to do. I was not impressed by his opening statement. I'm all for him trying. The notion he's going to go to the nail salons and the barbershops is fine in communities that have nail salons and barbershops. Not all the communities have those things.
Well, and I think that was a figure of speech.
What he means,
I think he needs to be careful.
What he means by that translation.
How do you know what he means?
I know exactly what he means. That's
Even
black
I
talk.
know what he means.
It's
Yeah.
black talk. It means when the brothers are getting their hair cut on Saturday morning, I'm going to be in the barbershop with the brothers to hear their point of view and also to hear the point of view of the Orthodox community when I meet with them in the meetings.
When did he say that?
That Trust me, that's what he meant.
Oh, I
Trust me.
I trust you. He did not make a nuanced opening
and
statement.
Richard, that's a great point, and that's why I say it's so important that they spend the time in the community, walk the streets of Spring Valley, walk the streets
It's
of
not
Muncie.
going to work.
But
it's
you
not,
think
it's
you,
not going to work.
And I'm not
here's
saying
why.
it's not
First,
saying it's a
you
silver
say,
bullet. It's not a
trust
silver
you.
bullet.
No,
And
no,
you
no.
say,
I said trust me. I said trust me.
I don't trust
Wait,
you.
what did you do on your vacation?
I don't trust you.
When I say trust me, I meant trust me for the interpretation of what Walcott meant. Walcott was a controversial figure in New York City.
Yes, he was.
He wasn't loved by everybody, and in particular by Black and Latino communities. And so for the Black and Latino community of East Ramapo, you think bringing somebody like Dennis Walcott in is going to solve it? They're going to be just as frustrated
I
as
didn't
ever.
say that. I said let's give him a chance to mediate. I also said his opening statement was not nuanced. Mr. O'Reilly.
Not a peep. Actually, I think something the senator said is exactly right. This district is like none other in the state. It's got a unique problem. Let's see how this goes. I think the reluctance in Albany was over precedent, the state government coming in to control a school board. Let's see how it
You know
goes.
what's
It's a
different
step
for me,
forward.
Bill, from the outside is it usually is the last guys who would do this are guys like the senator here. This is easy for somebody down in the 5 boroughs to put this legislation in. Or this is if a governor never carried the district before and he wants to try and send a message to a particular community. But these guys, the county exec did that. I mean, the guys who had the most amount of skin in the game put their necks on the line for this one, and the guys that you would think that could go along didn't. And I understand your point about precedent, but I thought the legislation was pretty tailored to this community. I didn't think that somebody at Albany or Syracuse had to risk this was happening to them next, because it's such a unique community.
Well, I think the benefit from having the monitor now appointed by the state education department will be that hopefully they can work together and figure out some of the stuff together without legislation. Now, in addition to that, we're going to have this monitor on the ground, an educational expert, to then have a blueprint for us. Part of his mission is going to be to study the state aid formula, something we've talked about for years, is the combined wealth ratio, and how that is at a disadvantage to East Ramapo.
But just if you could, Senator, answer this for me, because sometimes it's confusing. This one seemed pretty simple. You looked at the total budget and how the dollars got siphoned off into one community versus the other. The tangible impact was all the sports programs got killed for one. All the extra school activities got. The class size doubled, or if not, increased substantially. You could point to the tangible aspects of what happened to one school district versus the other. And every time that a hue and cry or an angry editorial or front page in Lowhud came out, the next year it would become even more draconian. I'm only saying we've tried the shame route. You've tried it. Others have tried it. I just don't understand, and there's nothing by harm to try, I grant you, Richard, but why should we have any optimism, to Dom's point, that next year is going to be any different in the budgetary process, even if Dennis Walcott says, oh, you know what, I don't think it's fair how the funding's allocated. They said, you know what, this is America. We elected our school board here. School board voted this way. Tough.
Right. Well, I mean, if you look at, there's mandates, right? There's things that have to be done. There's things that don't have to be done. And unfortunately, that's the law in New York State. Sports are not mandated. They're incredibly important. Guidance counselors, incredibly important. Honors classes, incredibly important, not mandated. Kindergarten, incredibly important, not mandated. And those are the programs that get cut first. And when you have a growing private school population like we do in East Ramapo, we're going to have about another 1,500 private school kids enter kindergarten this year. And that's not a population that's going to be decreasing anytime soon. So the problem, the tension, is going to get more and more severe. The division is going to get bigger and bigger. And that's why we have to have smart people working together and try to put themselves in the shoes of the teachers, of the children, and see what it's like, and then propose realistic solutions. And that's why I say I think that education policy hasn't kept up with the 21st century. We cannot have the same resources and allocate it the same way we do to a school district like East Ramapo as we do Briarcliff. Exactly. And this is what's happening in New York, and we kind of scratch our head and say, oh, why is there a problem? Because we are treating it the same way. Our community has drastically changed over the past decade. And I think that education policy hasn't kept up with that, and people don't know what to do. We make suggestions. You know, if I make a suggestion as a senator, 35% of the population is just going to dismiss it. They won't even read the bill because they're politicians. That's why. Yeah, right. So it could be a good idea or whatnot, but that's why you need an independent monitor to really lay it out and say the X, Y, and Z has to be done.
There's one interesting piece of this that we haven't touched. Look, the Department of Education should have done this 2 years ago. They didn't, and they punted to the legislature, and it was not leadership.
Yep.
And the Board of Regents, the commissioner at the time. Okay, now that the legislature, for reasons we've touched on and some other ones, hasn't moved forward, they're finally doing what they should have done 2 years ago. Everybody face forward. Let's try to get this thing to work. If it doesn't, we can go to the next thing.
Well, that's what I'm most excited about.
Band-Aid is not going to work.
Yeah.
You had to be in the same position right out the gate.
Hey, I got to wrap here, but real quickly,
Commissioner
Senator.
Carter,
No, I would say,
But really simple. The governor has shown when there's issues he's very invested in, he will use not only the bully
Interesting
pulpit,
point.
but the stick.
Interesting point.
Did you get enough help from the executive branch in Albany to help shepherd this thing through, or did you feel you were too much on your own?
I think
Don't listen to him.
No, I think what's important is we have a new commissioner. And no, I'm saying, look, she's been there for 26 days. I've been in the Senate for 5 years. I used to have to chase the commissioner
Well
down in the
done.
hallway.
Well done.
And now we have someone down in the district.
You know something?
You
You're
already
out.
did
You
it
gotta
before.
stop.
No, really
I
well
tried,
done.
Dominic, you know,
I've
but
been-
you are good. I'll give you that.
I've been
much. All right.
working with the governor's office, and I
He
believe
fought
that he
the
has a
good
commitment.
fight.
No, you
He
did.
fought
You
the
did.
good
Yeah,
fight.
he's earning his
All
paycheck here. No
now,
question.
we're going to get to Richard's favorite guy, the Donald. And the more he talks, the more his poll numbers spike, and the more I and many are in disbelief. But there is one thing, I keep saying this, but I really actually believe it this time. There's one thing that could actually bring him down, the fact that maybe he's not really a Republican, or at least he used to say he wasn't.